If you just try hard enough, you'll do it right. You can make somebody love you. You can make a dead-end job wonderful. You can make an unfixable situation fixed. You can make a chronic situation solved. And of course, you can't do any of these things, but I tried.
I have to say, I blame John Hughes for that.
Welcome to the No Guilt Mom podcast. I am your host, Joanne Crone, joined here by the lovely Bree Tucker.
Why, hello, everybody. How are you?
We get to talk all about people pleasing today, which is great because I feel like I am in, Bree, this recovering people pleasing mode where I am starting to do all the things to not try to upset people, but to try to really make sure my needs are met. And there's some backlash. And so I feel like this is a great conversation to have today because I'm currently feeling all the pain of being not a people pleaser.
And I feel your pain. I think that it is very well seen when you have teens.
Yes.
They like to bring my favorite flavor of the week this week of guilt from my teenager is, do you not love me? Come on. And I'm like,
bring it all.
Stop. I can say no and I still love you. But the puppy dog eyes and the whiny voice gets me every time.
I know. They know how to do it. Well, our guest today is Amy Wilson. Amy is the author of the memoir, When Did I Get Like This? And her latest book, Happy to Help. Since 2016, she has been the co-host of the Webby-honored podcast, What Fresh Hell? Laughing in the Face of Motherhood. Amy is also an actor who appeared on Broadway and as a series regular on TV sitcoms. She lives with her family in New York City. And with that, let's get on with the show.
You want mom life to be easier. That's our goal too. Our mission is to raise more self-sufficient and independent kids, and we're going to have fun doing it. We're going to help you delegate and step back. Each episode will tackle strategies for positive discipline, making our kids more responsible and making our lives better in the process. Welcome to the No Guilt Mom podcast.
Welcome, Amy, to the podcast. It is so good to talk with you again.
Thank you for having me both. Thank you both for having me, I should have said again.
It's one of those days.
Yes,
We've had trouble saying things
days.
all day.
I'm on my third coffee, hoping that it'll do a better job.
You should have seen Bree when she was trying to order her first coffee and she couldn't get any words out.
Right? And I just stared at the barista and I'm like, and this is why we need our coffee in the morning, I think.
That's right.
So.
Yeah. Well, I have been reading your book, Happy to Help, for the past few nights. And it is brings up so many emotions for me because as a people pleaser, I could see exactly where you were coming from, and especially your stories about being taught by nuns, because I was also taught by nuns.
Oh my God.
They're terrifying.
Well, and wonderful. I mean, I always feel like I have to say, I had some
wonderful.
wonderful women teaching me who were religious, and it's such a stereotype that they're all terrible, and I don't think they are. But my book does start with one that was.
They're not all terrible. You're right. I could say Sister Mary Claire and Sister Alicia, wonderful, wonderful. Sister Mary Louise, you ran from her, and I'm guessing that was the one in your book too.
That's right. And I think it was a time when women had fewer options, and so I'm thinking of this teacher in particular I had in the book, being a teacher was not really what she was cut out to do, but that was one of three things that nuns could do. And she didn't get assigned to a hospital. She was assigned to a school. And so she had to teach kids, which she had neither aptitude nor interest for. And she did it for 40 years. So no wonder you'd get a little impatient with the children, right?
I think I would be a little grumpy with the children as well. Bit. But do you feel that was one of the first stories in your book? Do you feel your people-pleasing instincts really started then? Or when do you feel they started?
Yeah. I mean, even though it's on the cover of my book, I have a lot of issues with the term people pleaser because it is something that women are told to be, that are assigned to be, that are raised to be. And we do it and we're good at it. And then when we say, I don't think I can do this anymore. I don't think I should be putting people first all the time. You stop being such a people pleaser becomes the first and only fix. Go away and think about what you've done. And stop people pleasing and then come back, right? And that is a fix that's one, not a fix, and two, something that nobody obligates themselves to participate in. It's just all put back on you. Just change how you are then. Just change how you are and
That
then
is
get back to
true.
us.
Just reach down to the core of you and your personality.
Yeah.
That you recognize, right?
Yeah. We don't really want to change the imbalance of who's doing what. We just want to change you being annoyed about it. So stop being a people pleaser and get back to us. I think, is that always the case? No. I mean, are there times when we need to look at putting other people's wants and needs before our own? Yes. But that's also very much our assignment as mothers.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of times when it's not optional. If you're putting your like sick kids' wants and needs before your own, you don't have a choice about that, right? And you're pretty happy to do it because you love your kid. But it can still be overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I guess this book about. Like when you come to the end of your rope and change who you are, change your outlook on the world is not really sufficient to fix the situation that you're in.
No, well, I feel like the situation that we're in is like very socialized with us from the beginning, like you said. And I could speak from my experience as a people pleaser and like trying to come out of it right now. When you get into, I mean, outside in the real world, I always say this as an entrepreneur. I'm like, I wish I was back in school if somebody was telling me exactly what I should do every single day to get my A, because it was so clear. It was like, do this, don't do that. And when you get into your career, especially when you're an entrepreneur, like you're the boss, nobody is telling you those things anymore. And so you're upsetting people left and right. You don't know what to do to get your gold star like you were raised to do in school. And it's so confusing. I mean, how did you feel about school and how you tended to be there versus like how you are now and how you relate to the world?
It's such a good point, Joanne, that in school, the goals are concrete and certain. And that, you know, when you're the A student, Girl Scout, class president, valedictorian, I can do that too, and I can do that too type of person, it's very gratifying to be like the blue ribbon kid who gets the A on the paper if you just work hard enough. And I actually talked about this in my first book. I tried to apply that if you just try hard enough, you'll get it right to parenting, which was the place where I unlearned that lesson, let's say. Like if you just try hard enough, you'll do it right. And so this book is kind of about the same thing because I'm still that person and I'm still unlearning those things, that if you try hard enough, you can make somebody love you. You can make a dead-end job wonderful. You can make an unfixable situation fixed. You can make a, chronic situation solved. And of course, you can't do any of these things, but I tried.
I have to say, I both love John Hughes and blame John Hughes for that narrative. No.
Fixing.
Yes. Because I just like come back to like the 80s. And I mean, granted, he did the teenage movies, but still. It was that thought process. And I feel like a lot of us got that message growing up. That was a lot of like the 80s type things were that you could do enough love and it would melt other people's hearts and they would change who they are and the situations would change. And like you said, you would get the big job promotion because you baked cookies for the right person. I don't know. But I mean, it still came with that like thought process that you could mold things into what you wanted by making everybody happy around you and loving you.
I see what you're saying. Yes. Like
right?
If Molly Ringwald, she's just so misunderstood, but one day Jake is going to look at her and he's going to be like, wow, she's really pretty. There's really something special about her. You're sitting there waiting to be noticed and then they turn and they notice you. You're right. That's something that's in movies and it doesn't happen in real life. That's right.
Yep.
I feel like that was my whole high school career right there. Just waiting to be noticed.
Someday he'll notice me. Yeah. I talk in the book about being in 8th grade and trying to apply the rules of Young Miss magazine, which doesn't exist anymore, but it was around back then. I got it in the mail every month. And it would tell me like, you have boy probs, you have figure problems, and I had to fix all my boy probs and figure problems. And all it did, of course, was to serve to like, I thought that I had to put on this antic disposition and act in this boy crazy way because I thought that was what I was supposed to be doing. And I was going to be good at it if that's what I was supposed to be doing. And I think it just baffled the boys in my 8th grade class. But I thought I was being super intriguing.
That you mentioned your 8th grade class, like you start out the book with the story about you and grammar, which I, as like a grammar nerd, I really got into it when I was a teacher. I taught English language learners. And so they taught us like all the structures of grammar, which I had never learned before. I could look back in my Facebook memories and I'm like, I'm teaching modals today. And like, I'm just so excited about it. First, that appealed to me. But also like when you were there in class and you were balancing, I feel like two identities, two things you wanted to achieve. You wanted people to like you, and you also knew the answer. Could you tell us that story really quickly?
Yeah. The book starts with the day that I decided to stop raising my hand because some of the boys in 8th grade had started calling me Brainiac, which I decided was not a loving nickname, was not a cool nickname, and I needed to be cool. And so the answer was very simple. I would stop raising my hand. And I really did love grammar, which, Joanne, thinking about, we both crave certainty, sounds like. So grammar, like there's a right answer, right? Mm-hmm. I loved grammar. Back then, we were diagramming sentences and learning like the 87 tenses of every verb. And I loved it, nesting categories and subcategories, and it all made sense to me. Even in the most like irregular language in the world, it all made sense to me. And I knew the answer, but that one day I'm like, okay, I'm not going to raise my hand because I do know the answer, but I have to stop raising my hand all the time so people will like me. Yeah. And this sister called on me anyway. I didn't have my hand raised. She could tell I knew the answer. She called on me. And when I did have the answer, she basically like said, who do you think you are? Not to raise your hand. Do you think you're better than the rest of the people in this classroom? Do you think you're better than your classmates? And I didn't know what to say. Still don't know what one's supposed to say. I know, it's terrible. And of course I had been doing that so people wouldn't think I thought I was better than everybody. Then here my teacher was telling everybody I thought I was better than them. And so the misapprehension I got that day is like, you can't not raise your hand. You have to raise your hand. Even if people won't like you for raising your hand too much, you have to show up with everything you have all the time.
Wow. See, I felt so bad for you in that moment from the teacher because being a middle schooler, that is a hard, socially awkward kind of phase. And I mean, I want to know, how did you deal with that feedback from the teacher? Did you keep raising your hand after that? Or were you like, no?
You know, there's a whole part too that I didn't even tell in the book because it just got too long. But I went to another teacher in that school, a nun who I loved. Picture Maria von Trapp, early years, right? And I met with her after school. And I cried to her, Sister Colleen. I'm like, Sister, you have to help me. She's being so mean to me. And she's in the front of the whole class. I don't know what to do. And it was the first moment I realized that I kind of was on my own because Sister Colleen, who was very nice, said like, oh, okay. All right. I'll try. I'll talk to her. And I could see in this adult's face the terror and like, oh, she's just as afraid of Sister Benedicta, not her real name, as I was. And she was saying to me, like, I'll go talk to her for you. You know, I just thought they were like, they're both nuns. They're both grown-ups. Like, they'd see eye to eye on everything. And instead, like, the nice nun was totally, like, pale-faced at the idea that she had to go advocate for this crying student to the mean one. And I realized, like, oh, she thinks she's afraid of her, too. Oh, we're all afraid of her. And that made me, I think, both feel like I was on my own and also feel like, oh, it's not me. You know, at least I got out of that, like, nothing personal. She's just mean. And I just have to get through this year. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So you used to call yourself a perfectionist and then a recovering perfectionist, but you've come to reject those definitions. And I think that a lot of no guilt moms out there also call themselves perfectionists. Mm-hmm. So I want to get into that right after this.
Are you a parent in need of a laugh and a little escape? Look no further. Parenting is a Joke is the podcast you've been waiting for. Hey, I'm Ophira Eisenberg. I'm a stand-up comic and parent. And each week I chat with one of my top comedian pals who, just like you, are juggling careers, busy lives and schedules, and raising a family. You can expect candid stories, hilarious mishaps that happen on stage and at home, and just a lot of laughs. There's no expert advice here. Well, actually, sometimes a good idea does sneak its way in, but mostly just pure, relatable fun to remind you that we're all in this parenting adventure together. New episodes of Parenting is a Joke drop every Tuesday, so tune in, get ready to laugh, unwind, and maybe even feel a little bit better about your own parenting. Because sometimes that's exactly what your therapist, pediatrician, and bartender ordered. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform.
Lynn, this time of year, parenting can be such a flusterclux.
You've come to the right place. I'm Lynn Lyons, and I've been treating anxious families for over 30 years.
I'm Lynn's sister-in-law and co-host Robin Hudson.
Join us for Flusterclux, a podcast for parents who worry.
Wait, that's everybody.
Yeah, these last few years have felt like one long anxiety attack for so many.
Why do you think parents are always surprised that a podcast about anxiety relates to them, even if no one in their house has an anxiety disorder?
Well, worry is human. Everyone does it. And anxiety shows up when we face uncertainty.
All the parenting tips you've taught me have been essential.
I love to break it down into skills we need to manage worry in our families.
We've covered so many topics: depression, burnout, meltdowns, perfectionism.
Don't forget scary mothers-in-law.
Right, but of course that's not my mother-in-law.
Because that's my mother.
And a listener.
As a psychotherapist, I like to teach parents and kids how to respond to everyday moments in healthy ways.
Managing anxiety really can be taught.
It really can. And I'll even tell you what to say.
We talk about serious stuff, but without being too serious.
Anxiety wants everything serious. Anxiety doesn't stand a chance when we're laughing, even about the tough stuff.
Hello, you sentient ball of stardust. My name is Casey Davis. I'm a therapist and I'm an author of the book, How to Keep House While Drowning, where I talk about ways to make it a little bit easier to take care of yourself when you're overwhelmed, stressed, have mental health issues, physical health issues, or maybe you're just in a hard season of life. Maybe you're looking for a place that you can come and listen to some practical advice. This is a podcast for all of the self-help rejects. We're going to talk about skills for survival and self-kindness. And I'm going to leave the pop psychology at the door. I promise not to tell you to meditate or to journal. We're just going to give you some really insightful conversations with hopefully some practical advice. So I don't believe you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't want you to just try harder, and I don't believe that laziness exists. So join me over on Struggle Care, where we can find compassionate solutions that help us function a little bit better.
Okay, Amy, let's really dig into this topic of perfectionism, because I think it goes along with the term people pleasing really hand in hand. So you used to call yourself a perfectionist and then a recovering perfectionist, and now you come to reject those definitions. So tell us more about that.
I honestly, the more I think about it, yes, perfectionism is like people pleaser. It's another one of those things that people tend to call women, not men, that women tend to take on for themselves. Studies show that many more women than men self-identify as both perfectionists and people pleasers. But I think it's because we respond to the ways that others categorize us in some ways. Like, oh, you're such a perfectionist. If my life is not going great and you tell me it's because I'm such a perfectionist, I will probably come to believe that, whether or not it's really true. But hand in hand with the perfectionist is that same sort of it's optional, right? Your struggles are optional. If you're a perfectionist, just wrap the present and don't care if the bow looks perfect. Just leave the house and don't care what your hair looks like. And then your problems will resolve or lessen. You're making everything harder than it needs to be. And when I would really stop and look at all of these things, I mean, I was a high achiever, but I didn't find myself crippled by I can't get this done because I have to triple proofread every email I send before it goes out. That didn't really resonate for me. People pleaser and perfectionist both also seem to go with me. You can't get out of your own way. You're spinning your wheels and you're stuck and you don't do anything. I'm like, that doesn't apply to me. I am a busy, productive woman, as are most women I know, who gets a lot done. I can't do it all because I have more to do than I have time to do it. But that's a logical puzzle that has solutions besides stop being such a perfectionist, you idiot, and I feel like too often that's where we stop. I need help. I need to change the way things are. Well, you need to lower your standards, and you go away right, I'm going to lower my standards. I'm going to read a book. and then it doesn't work, right? It's not sufficient fix. So I guess I'm sort of radically saying, throw all that out. What if you're not a perfectionist or a people pleaser? What if you're just somebody with too much to do?
Yeah. I feel like that is the whole of womanhood right there. You're just somebody with way too much to do and have so many expectations placed on you, including our own expectations, which are not our fault. They're societal expectations, which are ingrained in us to do the things we do and keep it going. And I could go into such a tirade now against the patriarchy, but I'm gonna hold that.
Well, I mean, you bring up a really good point, and we discussed this recently on another podcast episode. What is the ideal mom? right? What are the standards that society says is a great mom? You're somebody who always has it together, who can always whip up delicious food and host a party with no problem, and everybody loves you and you make everybody happy all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And with those kinds of standards, both that like a good mother can do all of that, which also then leads into a good woman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have these insane expectations. And then it's so patronizing, like you just said, for people to be like, well, then just chill out more. You don't need to do it all. Oh,
Right.
I'm so happy that you're saying that.
Right. Just, it'll all get done, says
Yeah.
the person who knows that you will make sure that it all gets done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Did you know that there are actually 3 types of perfectionists? This was researched done in the 90s. I talk about it in the book. Dr. Gibbs and Dr. Flett, I forget their first names, and they wrote a huge paper on perfectionism that's been very influential ever since. So there's 3 types, they say. There's self-directed, self-oriented, others-oriented, and socially prescribed. So self-oriented is, I can't leave the house, I have to wash my hair and start over again because it's not perfect. That's self-oriented. Others-oriented might have been Sister Benedicta, being mad at everybody all the time that we weren't perfect. And then socially prescribed is the perfectionist who believes that the people around her, either society or her partner or, the systems she exists within, micro and macro, hold her to unreasonable standards. And I read that and I circled it like, yeah, that's me. Okay, yes, I am a perfectionist if that's what a perfectionist is. But their research, and they were both male, but their research said that was imaginary, that perfectionist only believed that society was holding her to high standards, but that wasn't true.
And that was amazing.
And so the fix was her getting over that false perception. I'm like, oh, okay. Like there's nothing false about that perception. It is true. I mean, you can reject it, but the idea that you're only imagining that those expectations exist, I mean, I don't know any woman who would say, I'm making it up in my mind.
Yeah. Nobody else thinks that. It's just me.
It's just me.
So it's really interesting that it was a male who did that, because we're doing interviews right now for our Happy Mom Summit in March. And I just got off one with Dr. Jane Morgan, who is a cardiologist. And we were talking about how women in healthcare are underrepresented. And she's told me that most people who are in medical trials are like 170-pound men, and they get all their results from that. And then they have to kind of like skew things the other way, because in a lot of like these drug trials and a lot of everything, like recruits like. So these companies are headed by men. So then they recruit like a male doctor who's very well connected. They know well to run the study. And then there's when women are unrepresented in healthcare as well. So it was funny that you said that the men were like, this is all made up, because obviously women are understudied.
Yeah, right. So again, the fix was, so then the problem is you just have to convince that socially prescribed perfectionist to stop thinking that.
Oh my
and
gosh.
then all will be well.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like a conversation I had with my husband the other day where I was talking about how something was making me anxious or whatever. And I'm like, what do you do to not be anxious? He's like, honey, I don't know. I just don't worry about that stuff. He's like, but I feel you that you do. But still, I'm just like, gosh, dang it. Like, where was the ticket to say I want a male's sense of things I have to be done?
Right.
I'm not saying that they never do. There are many that do. But when you compare it on a societal standard, men can just kind of coast.
I always have something I tell myself when I don't have the confidence to do something. And this is something my husband tells me as well. He's like, Joanne, you just need to go into it with the confidence of an average white male.
That's true. There's a study. I'm making up the exact percentages, but it showed that a male would apply for a job if he had 20% of the listed requirements, but average woman wouldn't apply unless she has 80 to 90% of that job's requirements.
Right.
So one study,
No,
but yeah,
that's
interesting.
totally true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Amy, I was a theater major when I went to college, and I dropped out because I could not handle the rejection. So knowing your career and knowing that you were a self-proclaimed perfectionist and all the people pleasing, we're going to get into that one right after this, because I want to know how that went and dealing with all of these.
Are you overwhelmed by the things that get in the way of you doing what you want to do? Are you looking for ways to simplify life to better align with your values? Do you want to create space in your schedule so you have room for more of the good stuff? Play, joy, relationships, gratitude, and more? If you answered yes to any of these questions, I invite you to check out Edit Your Life, a podcast to help you edit the unnecessary from your life so you have more room to enjoy the awesome. Through episodes with me, Christine Coe, and a range of super smart, compassionate, and thoughtful guests, you'll come away with big picture insights and practical ways to declutter your home, schedule, and mental space without getting bogged down by perfection. I have always believed that small moments and actions matter tremendously. My goal is to help you find agency and space in your life through doable baby steps that will leave you feeling accomplished instead of overwhelmed. Check out Edit Your Life wherever you enjoy your podcasts.
When it comes to raising kids, there's so much to consider. Things like, what do we feed them? When do we feed them? How do they sleep? What does it look like to raise kind kids? How does their nervous system work? How do I keep myself calm? What are my triggers? There's so much that comes into play, and we are distilling all of that information for you at Voices of Your Village podcast, where we bring experts in the field of early childhood and education and psychology and across the board so that you don't have to comb the internet for information. You get to show up and hang out and have shame-free, judgment-free conversations and insights into what it looks like to raise kind, empathetic, emotionally intelligent humans. I'm Alyssa Blask Campbell. I have a master's degree in early childhood education. I'm a mom of 2, and I am walking this journey right alongside you doing this work. Come hang out with me at Voices of Your Village, and we can dive into real conversations with actionable tips.
Hey friends, if you're facing divorce, thinking about it, or navigating the chaos it can bring, I've got something just for you. I'm Kate Anthony, and I host the New York Times recommended The Divorce Survival Guide podcast, your one-stop resource for surviving and thriving through divorce. Each week, we dive into everything from emotional healing and co-parenting to legal strategies and starting over. You'll hear from top experts, powerful guest stories, and maybe a little tough love along the way. Because divorce, it's hard, but you don't have to do it alone. This isn't just about getting through it. It's about rebuilding and reclaiming your life on the other side. Whether you're in the middle of a messy split or planning your next chapter, I've got your back. So hit that follow button and join me on the Divorce Survival Guide podcast, because survival isn't the end, it's just the beginning.
So, Amy, you spent a lot of time in theater. You were a regular on TV sitcoms. In your book, you're talking about like doing sketch comedy every night, like putting yourself out there on stage. Being a performer, I feel, is one of those careers where you face so much rejection and so much other people's opinions. How did you deal with these aspects of yourself, with wanting to constantly please and help and do what's best for other people, and to succeed as a performer too?
It's it's a good question because, talk about like a fertile ground for a people pleaser. When you're auditioning, now more auditions are online post-pandemic. Everybody started taping themselves in their living rooms and sending in the MP4. And now, that's kind of how it's done, which I haven't acted much since the pandemic, but that sounds lonely and hard. But it was also hard back in the day to wait in the hallway and hear the other people through the wall and pretend you couldn't hear them and go over your lines. And then you go in and there's 3 or 4 people sitting behind a table and you get up and you do your thing. And learning, which I did learn over time pretty well, was not to gauge their reactions during your audition, right? So there's there's you reading your scene, and then there's also you on the ceiling looking down at you doing the scene, and the guy eating his lunch, and the person looking at the back of your resume and saying like, how am I doing? How am I doing? Are they smiling? Are they laughing? You don't get parts when your attention is fractured that way. And so over time, I learned to go in and do my thing and erase that how am I doing while I was in the room for the most part. And then also, how'd I do? Did they like me? As soon as you leave the room after the audition, you have to just put it out of your mind. You have to stop thinking about it, because you won't find out if you didn't get it. You'll only find out if you did get it, a phone call or email that comes, as you can imagine, far, far less frequently. So you have to learn to stop caring what other people think or trying not to care while you are like under the microscope and they're deciding if they like you more or less than somebody else. It's not easy, but it might have helped me.
That sounds like that would be so difficult.
Yeah, I think it is difficult, but I think it probably also helped me in other areas of my life. Like you got to let it go. You got to stop wondering what everybody's thinking while you're talking because you won't get anywhere. So I think it was probably good for me in a way, but it is like, it's hard for the self-esteem. You have to do lots of self-talk around it that you're good anyway.
Yeah. I guess when you go through it over and over again, I could see how you may like be able to overcome those parts of yourself to want to please and to want to get out of your head. I remember like I heard you talk at Mom 2.0 like a few years ago about an audition you did where like this big famous director who I don't know if you want to talk about this story or not, but
yeah, it was Woody Allen. This is a long time ago now, but I got very far along in to play like a big part in one of his movies, you know, the ingenue, they would call it. So I got the call, and the night before at home, they were prepping me over the phone. They said, now he's not going to be super warm in the room, and we just don't want anything he does to be distracting or strange. You're just going to go about your audition. And I'm like, okay, no problem. Like listen to us. And I was like, oh yeah. I was so excited I had an audition to meet Woody Allen that I wasn't really listening to what they were telling me. And I got in the room, and he was, you know, I won't go into too much detail here. Like he was just as off-putting and strange in his affect as I had been told that he was going to be, which immediately threw me. And then he said something to me like, so I thought you might like to audition for this part, as if like it had just occurred to him and then not like that's why I was there and I'd had 8 auditions already. And then he went and sat. I mean, it was like an airport hangar sized room. And he sat so far away. I mean, like 20 feet away. And I didn't know. I'm still not sure telling the story today. Like, am I supposed to act big enough so he can read it because he's really far away? Or am I supposed to do a film, you know, keep it pretty small and tight, I wasn't mic'd or anything. Like, how is he going to get anything? I didn't know the answer to that question. And now I will probably say like, I'm sorry, I need a minute. Can I talk? And I would go take somebody out in the hallway and just ask them that question. Instead, there I was, me reading the scene with somebody else with me also looking down at me, trying to be loud, but also not that loud. And also like trying to be all things to all people, trying to guess what he thought. And the look on the casting director's face as I was reading with her was just like, I could just tell I was just blowing it in real time, and I didn't know what to do about it. But it definitely was a part that I lost because, yes, I just completely started worrying about how I was doing from a person who was not going to give me, he wasn't going to be effusive anyway. They had told me that, like, don't worry about what he's doing or thinking. Just do your part. And I couldn't do it. I was too thrown.
Oh, wow. It's so interesting when you get into those situations. I had something very similar to that happen to me too, when a big job interview, and like you're just like trying to figure out what everybody else wants, and you get it wrong, and then you abandon yourself. Yeah. And I think that's always like what I look back on my job interview experience as. Like I abandoned myself in that moment, and that's what I'm upset about.
Yeah, yeah, and you're exactly right. When I look back on that now, I mean, it's just a funny story now. It was a long time ago, but. Yeah, when I look back on it, I'm more mad that I abandoned myself than I am that I didn't get X part, you know, because at some point you have to let things go.
Yeah. So as a parent now, and Brie and I were talking about how hard it is to be a parent of teenagers when you like to make everyone happy because they will tell you everything that you're doing. What have you like taken from parenthood that may have changed your perception of and brought you to where you currently are today in terms of people pleasing and perfectionism?
Well, okay, so the second last essay of the book is about the college application process, which I think is yet another example where if you're the default parent, which I am, and I'm the mom, and in most other families I knew going through this, it was the mom, not necessarily, but the default parent has to assist in this college application process, which has gotten so complicated. Everybody's applying to 20 schools. They have to write 50 essays. They have to this and this. They all have to be like saving the rainforest at the same time. And it's gotten so out of hand.
Yeah.
And yet when people talk about it, what do they circle as the real issue? It's the annoying, uptight parents. that it's really the parents making everything worse. And yes, there's like the varsity blues people, like they definitely made things worse, but it was out of a desire to do what was right for their kids.
Yeah.
And you are put in this situation where you feel like you have no choice but to try to help them spreadsheet this impossible thing while they're getting ready to leave the nest. So everything you suggest is the stupidest idea they've ever heard. It's really high stakes, high stress.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, it gets thrown that what's really the problem is the annoying, overbearing moms that are ruining the whole process. And not that like schools have 4% acceptance rates and and disappoint. It's also preposterous. And the FAFSA form is broken. Like that's what's wrong with the college application process. The process, not the annoying moms trying to circle some of the problems with the process and saying this seems really unfair and unwieldy to me. But you have to kind of walk that gauntlet anyway. And at the end of it, you have the prize of letting your child walk away from you. And so I write in the book too about that when I said goodbye to my oldest kid, it felt like it was going to be such a moment. And in the actual moment, I mean, he did hug me, but then he got on the bus back to the shuttle bus back to the main campus, and he didn't even wave goodbye. Like he looked at his phone, and the bus, it just was the most anticlimactic.
Nothing like what
goodbye.
The movies have told us. Again,
nothing like the movies have told us. Right. And I could only laugh that it was so dramatic to me.
Yeah.
It was so non-dramatic to my kid, but it was also as it should be. Yeah. Like my kid was so set, so ready to leave me,
so secure
that he could right away looking at his phone instead of waving goodbye to me. He was in the new world already. He's moved on. Good job, Mom. But you're patting yourself on the back at that point.
Yeah. While you're crying, sobbing. I don't know. I have a senior. I have a senior in high school right now. So I'm hearing this story going, oh my God, all the feels.
It's so much. It's like a big birthday. It's like turning 40 or turning 50. It is so scary when it's in the road just in front of you. And then when it's behind you, it's like, oh my God, what was that? Like, why was I so upset about that?
You're like,
right.
It's all good. It's all good.
Your kid leaving for college, I always feel, obliged to tell parents that it definitely seems way bigger when it's in front of you. When the emptying nest moment is approaching, it seems huge. And then, and then you're texting with them and talking to them and it's okay. It's really okay. And you're so proud of them. And it's way better. It'll be way better a year from now than it is now.
Fantastic.
That's very encouraging advice because I have a junior who's about to start with it, and the
hard part's now.
Scared, but also I feel like I am looking forward to that freedom. I am looking forward to being able to go out to restaurants that are my choosing, all of those things again.
Right,
so,
right. It's okay. Thing. It's really okay. Yeah, good times lie ahead.
Yeah. Well, tell me what's coming up for you, Amy, that you're really excited about.
Honestly, this book coming out into the world and getting to do podcasts and book clubs and just talk to people who are reading the book. It's really interesting as I'm having different conversations. People pull on really different threads, and I'm just loving it. It's so fun. Some authors would find this part really draining and really stressful, and I'm sort of a ham, so I find this part really fun. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Well, that is exciting. So listening to this now, go out and buy Amy's book. It is out in the world. You can find it everywhere that books are sold. And thank you, Amy, so much for coming on and talking with us. It's always a joy.
Thank you, Joanne. Thanks, Bree.
So in that interview with Amy, she was talking about her audition with Woody Allen, and I was reminded of this interview I had. It was at Warner Brothers Television Studios, and I had aced the pre-interview. I had so bonded with the assistant who interviewed me, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing!" And then the day of the interview, I had gotten so in my head. First of all, I was sitting at a coffee shop, and I'm like, "Oh, my nails are awful. I should really go get a manicure before the interview." And I didn't go get a manicure. And so I walk into Warner Brothers Studios, and there's an assistant at the desk, and he's a guy. And I don't know why I'm so self-conscious about my nails. And then usually I would chat people up. I'm very friendly. And I'm like, oh, yeah, what are you doing? But for this instance, I'm like, no, this is Warner Brothers. I shouldn't bother him. I shouldn't ask any questions, because they kept me waiting for 40 minutes there in that chair for the interview. And then when I went into the interview with the exec, she was so nice, but I was so nervous, so concerned about my nails. I ended up calling my sister a townie because she stayed in Tucson. Like all these things that I would never say out of my mouth because I was so worried about making a good impression there. I abandoned myself and my entire personality in that interview. And of course, no one called me for it. But I mean, I was reminded of that as a people pleaser. You try to make things happen and do the right thing. And then like nothing good happens.
There's, in my opinion, interviews are the epitome of people pleasing because you're just like, say the answer they want to hear. Say the answer they want to hear. Like that's, but in general, like the whole people pleasing thing, it is a difficult role that many of us moms take on.
It is.
So.
And especially with our kids. I realize I do it actually more with my son than my daughter. And I was reading recently that there's like, when you have a child who is very outwardly emotional, sometimes the parents try to protect those emotions from happening. And that's something that I realized I was doing. And so like, I've had to stop doing that. The emotions have come out. And I'm like, I am not scared of your emotions. I am not scared of your emotions. This is what I've been doing. But it's totally abandoning that people pleasing and that trying to control and seeing all of the repercussions. So
I'm working on it. You know me, I'm a recovering. They're crying. It's okay. People can cry. They can feel their emotions. I don't have to fix it. I don't have to make it all better. They can cry because like when I'm sad, I want to cry. So just seriously, the voices in my head, so many, so fast.
But you're talking yourself through it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was crying on a team meeting this week and you're like, and I have difficulty with these emotions and I'm okay.
I will just let you cry
and tell you. You can get it all out.
Tell you as your friend that I love you. And that's all I can tell you.
Exactly. That's all people need. People just want to be seen. And I'm realizing that more and more.
Yeah.
I just want to be seen. Go out and buy Amy's book. It is phenomenal. She is such a gifted writer. And I say that because like when you read her book, it just flows so easily. And like I easily spent an hour before I even realized what the time was. Go get it. It's full of delightful stories that I know that you will definitely love, including one where she was a personal assistant to an actress. And the stuff that the actress had her do is insane. So go get the book for that.
And then tell us, who do you think the actress is?
Yeah. She says, she says her first name, but maybe she did change the name, like Sister Benedicta. She said not her real name. So she might have changed a name there. I would imagine.
Interesting.
Remember, the best mom is a happy mom. Take care of you. Happy 2025, everybody. And we'll talk to you later.
Thanks for stopping by.
Hello, you sentient ball of stardust. My name is Casey Davis. I'm a therapist and I'm an author of the book How to Keep House While Drowning, where I talk about ways to make it a little bit easier to take care of yourself when you're overwhelmed, stressed, have mental health issues, physical health issues, or maybe you're just in a hard season of life. Maybe you're looking for a place that you can come and listen to some practical advice. This is a podcast for all of the self-help rejects. We're going to talk about skills for survival and self-kindness. And I'm going to leave the pop psychology at the door. I promise not to tell you to meditate or to journal. We're just going to give you some really insightful conversations with hopefully some practical advice. So I don't believe you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't want you to just try harder, and I don't believe that laziness exists. So join me over on Struggle Care, where we can find compassionate solutions that help us function a little bit better.